Harry and Meghan skipping Sandringham once again was not just another quiet Christmas decision, it was a message, deliberate or not, that echoed far louder than any statement they could have released, because Sandringham is not simply a place where the royal family gathers for turkey and church walks, it is the emotional heart of royal tradition, a symbol of continuity, belonging, and loyalty to the crown. And every absence from that estate is noticed, analysed, and remembered, especially when that absence involves Prince Harry, a man who once walked those same paths as a beloved son and grandson, laughing beside his brother, standing just a step behind the future king, and yet this Christmas, as King Charles, Prince William, Kate, and the rest of the royal family gathered once more in Norfolk under the gaze of cameras and cheering crowds, Harry and Meghan were thousands of miles away in California, living a completely different kind of royal life, one defined not by protocol but by privacy, not by tradition but by choice, and while on the surface this may appear like a simple continuation of the status quo, after all, the Sussexes have skipped Sandringham for several years now. Royal watchers agree that this particular absence carried extra weight, because it came at a moment when speculation about reconciliation, olive branches, and quiet peace talks had been quietly circulating, and many had wondered whether Christmas, of all times, might finally bring the brothers back under the same roof, even briefly, even symbolically, but that reunion never came, and instead, the silence spoke volumes, because Christmas in the royal family is never accidental, every invitation is intentional, every attendance is loaded with meaning, and every absence invites questions about what has broken beyond repair. And insiders suggest that this latest decision reinforces a growing reality that the rift between Harry and the rest of the royal family is no longer frozen in time, but evolving into something more permanent, more settled, and perhaps more painful, because skipping Sandringham again suggests not a temporary cooling-off period, but a complete emotional and logistical separation from the rhythms of royal life, and for Harry, this choice may feel like self-preservation, a way to protect his wife and children from an environment he believes was harmful, while for the royal family, it may feel like confirmation that Harry no longer sees himself as part of the collective story, and that divergence is at the very core of the royal feud, because the monarchy survives on shared rituals, and once those rituals are repeatedly rejected, the bond weakens not just emotionally, but institutionally, and royal commentators point out that even royals who fall out with one another often still show up at Sandringham, because it signals unity above personal grievances. But Harry and Meghan's continued absence signals the opposite, that personal boundaries now override royal optics, and this is where the meaning deepens, because while Harry and Meghan have often spoken about wanting reconciliation, healing, and understanding, their actions suggest a parallel truth, that they are building a life so separate from the monarchy that reintegration, even symbolic, becomes increasingly unlikely. And critics argue that you cannot step away year after year and still expect to be seen as part of the inner circle, especially when the monarchy itself is undergoing a generational transition, with King Charles still finding his footing and Prince William steadily asserting his authority as heir, and every Christmas that passes without Harry at Sandringham subtly reshapes the public's perception of who truly belongs at the centre of royal life, and this is why some royal experts believe that this latest skip matters more than previous ones, because it comes at a time when the royal family is trying to project stability, unity, and a sense of calm after years of turbulence, and Harry's absence undermines that image, not through confrontation, but through quiet distance, and distance, in many ways, is more damaging than open conflict, because it leaves no room for dialogue, no visible path forward, just parallel lives moving further apart. And while Meghan and Harry reportedly enjoyed a warm, private Christmas with their children, far from cameras and expectations, the contrast with Sandringham could not be starker, because on one side, you have tradition stretching back generations, and on the other, a modern family choosing to write its own story, and the question that now hangs in the air is no longer why Harry and Meghan skipped Sandringham, but what it truly means for the future of the royal feud, and whether this repeated absence marks the quiet acceptance that whatever bond once tied Harry to the royal family has fundamentally changed from Sandringham settled into the public consciousness, attention quietly shifted to those who were there, because sometimes what matters just as much as who leaves is who remains. And this year the cameras lingered longer on Prince William, on Kate, on their children walking confidently towards St. Mary Magdalene Church, projecting stability, continuity, and a future that looked firmly rooted in tradition. And royal observers noted how relaxed William appeared. How comfortable he looked inhabiting the role that once felt shared between two brothers, because with every Christmas Harry misses, William steps further into the space his brother once occupied, not aggressively, not triumphantly, but inevitably, and insiders suggest that William no longer expects Harry to return for moments like these, emotionally preparing himself for a monarchy where his younger brother exists only at the margins, present at historic events perhaps, but absent from the intimate rituals that truly define royal family life. And this emotional recalibration matters, because for years William was said to be deeply hurt by Harry's departure, by the interviews, the accusations, the sense of betrayal, but time has a way of hardening wounds into acceptance, and what we may now be witnessing is not anger but resignation, a quiet understanding that the brother he once knew has chosen a different path, one William cannot follow without abandoning his own duty. And King Charles, too, appeared caught in this tension, smiling for the cameras yet carrying the visible weight of a father whose family story has fractured in public, because while Charles has spoken repeatedly about love, reconciliation, and keeping the door open, each Christmas Harry and Meghan spend away from Sandringham makes that door feel heavier, harder to reopen, and royal commentators suggest that Christmas, more than any other moment, is when absences sting the most, because it is not about duty or protocol but about belonging, and Harry's continued absence subtly rewrites the emotional map of the royal family, shifting him from son and brother to distant relative, a role reinforced not by statements but by repetition, year after year, and the public, too, is absorbing this shift, because images of William and Kate with their children are beginning to replace older images of the two brothers together, shaping a new narrative of the monarchy's future that no longer includes Harry in any central way. And this matters because the monarchy survives not just on power but on story, and stories change when characters stop appearing, and meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Harry and Meghan are building a parallel narrative, one that prioritizes privacy, healing, and control over their own image, and while supporters applaud this as healthy boundary setting, critics argue that it deepens the rift by removing any remaining shared experiences that could serve as bridges, and this is where the royal feud becomes less about arguments and more about absence, because reconciliation requires proximity, shared space, shared time, and Sandringham has historically provided exactly that, a neutral ground where grievances were set aside for the sake of family and crown. But by skipping it again, Harry and Meghan are not just declining an invitation. They are declining participation in one of the monarchy's most powerful bonding rituals, and whether intentional or not, that decision sends a clear signal that their emotional center of gravity now lies elsewhere, and the longer this continues, the harder it becomes to imagine a future where Harry casually steps back into that world without it feeling forced, symbolic, or purely ceremonial, and royal insiders warn that what begins as absence can slowly become erasure, not out of cruelty but out of practicality, because institutions adapt to who shows up, and those who don't are eventually planned around. And so this Christmas, like the ones before it, quietly reshaped the royal landscape, not with drama or confrontation, but with silence, with distance, and with the growing sense that the royal feud is no longer something waiting to be resolved, but something already settling into its final shape.